Hello, my name is Cheryl Cook Posley, and welcome to the presentation of Chapter 10, Engagement in E-Learning, Activities for Promoting Generative Learning. Today we'll discuss what is engagement, engagement in generative processing. We'll look at the two types of engagement, behavioral and psychological. We'll explore the impediments to behavioral engagement and drill into engagement activities like self-explanation, teachbacks, drawing assignments, and what we know and what we don't know about engagement in generative processing. Engagement can be defined as the extent to which learners are motivated, invested, and actively involved in learning, as reflected in their participation, interactions with others, and effort to understand and apply content. Engaged learners are more likely to retain information, transfer learning to real-world contexts, and achieve stronger learning outcomes. Successful engagement supports generative learning, in which learners actively transform lesson content into meaningful mental representations or mental models. Engagement activities are unlikely to produce productive learning unless they meet three criteria. They minimize extraneous cognitive load, promote accurate representations of content, and align learner processing with instructional goals. Engagement alone is insufficient. Activities must direct learners' cognitive resources towards selecting, organizing, and integrating information in ways that support the intended learning outcomes. Generative activities include verbalizing, visualizing, and enacting. Let's pause and see how this breaks down on the next slide. Consider this table from our text. Do you see where they break down across the three types? Verbal, visual, and enacted? Great. Well, here's your first question. Which generative learning activity or activities listed in this table have you used? With whom have you used them? In what settings have you applied them? And how effective were they? Take a moment. Great. Well, effective behavioral engagement often requires instructional support to guide learners' responses. They include overt or direct actions that learners intentionally take to improve learning, including interactive lesson activities such as clicking on objects, that old drag and drop, typing text, and posting responses in the chat box, as well as paralinguistic controls like tone inflection and volume control. Psychological engagement involves selection, organizing, and integrating, as mentioned before, that is meaningful, those meaningful interactions between the learner and the instructional environment that supports achievement of the learning goal. Psychological engagement can occur with or without behavioral engagement. However, behavioral engagement has the added advantage of producing an observable output that can be evaluated and supported with feedback. There are some impediments, however, when behavioral activities interrupt or disrupt learning. Behavioral activities can impede learning under three conditions: when they impose excessive extraneous cognitive load, leaving insufficient working memory for generative processing; when they result in inaccurate representations of content, such as flawed drawings or misconceptions; and of course, when they promote shallow processing, such as asking learners to repeat content verbatim rather than transform it. The bottom line is this: Behavioral activities should promote task-relevant generative processing while minimizing extraneous cognitive load and supporting accurate learner representations. This requires clear instructional guidance, sufficient support for task completion, and substantive feedback that confirms or corrects the learner's understanding. Clark and Mayer identify three engagement activities that promote generative processing. These activities foster psychological engagement by supporting learners' selection, organization, and integration of information in ways that align with the learning objectives. One, self-explanation, teachbacks, and drawings. Let's explore. Self-explanation encourages learners to break down lesson content in their own words. I've seen learners generate unique understandings by connecting ideas within a lesson, and I'm sure you have too. And when they do this, they're able to relate content to their prior knowledge or professional context. Self-explanations may be verbal or written and primarily reflect psychological engagement, as they do not always produce visible output. And the research suggests that this strategy supports deeper learning and improved performance. However, a recent meta-analysis indicates that in mathematics courses, self-explanations can lead to inaccuracies, highlighting the need for effective scaffolding in this domain. I found two approaches particularly effective in supporting self-explanation: embedding self-explanation prompts within the lesson and providing clear guidance to help learners construct accurate explanations. In this course, prompts such as "What surprised you in the chapter?" as Dr. Scott says, that serves as a self-explanation technique that encourages learners to articulate their understanding. I have also observed self-explanations in applied settings, such as in the healthcare industry, where individuals are asked to explain instructions in their own words. This practice allows instructors or professionals to assess the understanding, like when a doctor says, "And how are you taking your medications?" or "What are your dietary restrictions?" And the patient repeats back their understanding of how to take their medications. This allows the doctor or the professional or the teacher to give feedback and to support further organization and integration of knowledge. A violation of this would be if I just simply asked a closed-ended question, like, "What did you like about the lesson?" What does a teach back look like? Well, we're doing it right now. For this assignment, we were asked to select one or more chapters and then tasked with teaching the material in a 10 to 12-minute presentation. Teachbacks may be delivered to live audiences or to an imagined audience through non-interactive teaching assignments, such as this one. Consistent with the modality principle, oral teachbacks can be more effective than written explanations and can even enhance social presence. However, excessive social presence may hinder learning when increased presentation anxiety interferes with cognitive processing. And let's face it, we all get nervous. But scholars suggest that embedding brief, periodic oral teachbacks throughout a lesson is a more effective practice than simply relying on written teachbacks or a single teachback activity left to the end of an instructional moment. Fiorella and Mayer emphasize that learning by teaching promotes deeper understanding by requiring learners to explain material to others. And Barg and Schul, along with Fiorella and Mayer, agree with this. Similar to self-explanation, they say learning by teaching encourages learners to organize content into a coherent structure and elaborate on ideas to clarify meaning. Explaining content to others also introduces social factors such as increased social presence and opportunities for interaction, which can further support generative processing. Drawing assignments prompt learners to transform textual descriptions into visual representations. However, research findings have been mixed. In many cases, learner-generated drawings are inaccurate or insufficient, reflecting misunderstandings of the content or shallow levels of processing during the activity. And based on current evidence, Clark and Mayer suggest that instructors should generally provide instructor-generated graphics and rely on more efficient generative learning activities such as self-explanation questions to support accurate understanding and deeper processing. So what have we learned? What have we learned about some of the research limitations and opportunities? Well, we know that more research is needed to better understand the implications of generative engagement strategies in multimedia design lessons, including virtual reality, immersive virtual reality simulations, and animations. We discovered that the effects of periodically embedded generative activities on learning transfer and delayed outcomes is something we need to interrogate further, and the motivational impact of assignments, social presence, and its impact on engagement strategies across industries beyond formal education, along with investigating the boundary conditions associated with fostering generative activities. So what should we look for in e-learning? E-learning engagement should promote generative processing that enables learners to transform lesson content, minimize extraneous cognitive load, incorporate relevant feedback support, self-explanation for building accurate mental modes or models with appropriate spatial relations, and include teach-back activities for real or imagined audiences. Thank you so very much for participating in watching this video. I look forward to the discussion on the other side.